Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Stephen V, and you're listening to the Take Care and Live podcast. Listen, the purpose of the podcast is to help you live, lead, and thrive through the intersections of life. That's what we're all about. We are about helping you live, lead, and thrive through the intersections of life. And there is nothing like having a challenge you didn't expect, a circumstance you didn't anticipate, cause you to be reflective and reset the pace of your life and the priorities of your life. It will happen to us almost each and every single day. And so what we need to remember is that you're not in this life alone. You have people like me, you have people like the friends around you who are here to help you move forward, move ahead, and do so successfully. So let's jump into today's episode. We have a culture and we're in a time now where there's an obsession with getting things done fast and efficiently. That pervades our culture, not just in the United States, but globally, in global societies, and it has been that way for decades. And our ability to be vastly more interconnected across countries, across continents, has been made possible because of our growing access to smart technologies, right? No secret. The smarter the technology, the easier it is for us to be connected and to get things done. And so one of the experiences that we also face is we assume that because we are more interconnected, that we also have the ability to move faster. And that, quite frankly, the norm should be for us to move faster. And there's a case for that, but not in every case, right? Certainly, the ability to connect, meet, strategize, execute has gotten simpler. In a lot of ways, it has become more cost-effective. But one of the things you don't want to miss out on is the honoring of your unique design. And we're going to talk about that. There's a unique contribution you're called to make into the world, and it's got to be honored. Your pace has a lot to do with that. All the advantages of our modern technology, of our modern society, can also present challenges at their very core, right? They can challenge the very nature of who you are. They can challenge your own unique superpowers, if you will. There are superpowers that many people have that are not driven by the sense of moving at a fast pace, right? The art of reflection, the ability to create, the skill of questioning and observation and negotiation. Those are actually superpowers that people have that require time on task, not necessarily a focus on speed. And the ability to get almost anything done anywhere at any time can create a false assumption for us that speed and working at a fast pace should be a common accepted practice for almost all circumstances. And that is simply not the case. So let's clarify some things. This is why, because of the pace in which society moves and because of our advances technologically and socially, people who have these superpowers, as I just described, and others, because there are plenty of others, that enable or require them to spend time on processes, often end up resenting themselves because they believe that they're not moving at the pace in which everyone else is. They're buying into the deception or the lie that somehow, if they're not moving as fast as the rest of the world, everyone within their particular pocket or circle are moving, that they're not winning, that they're not being successful, that they're not being effective. That couldn't be further from the truth. Here's the reality. Your pace can have a lot to do with your purpose. Your pace can have a lot to do with your purpose. The speed in which you move and operate can very well be connected or indicative of your unique design and gifting as an individual. Your pace is often connected to your very specific calling and your own usefulness in the world. All right? You were wonderfully and fearfully made. You were uniquely designed. There's no one else like you. And so understanding that also means that there is a way of operating and being in the world that makes you distinct from what everyone else does, including what some of the modern pressures and expectations about your pace that have been laid on you. The challenge for you and me is that we don't allow ourselves to get brainwashed or entrapped by other people's standards for our pace and productivity. Likewise, we need to also be mindful that we don't attempt to make other people into our own image and replicate our pace for productivity or action or movement. Okay? There's a wonderful passage in scripture that says there's one body but many members, right? Suppose that the foot says, hey, I'm not a hand, or so I don't belong to the body, or another says, I'm not an ear. What if the ear says, I'm not an eye, so I don't belong to the body? By saying this, the body is compromising itself. If the whole body were an eye, how could it hear? If the whole body was an ear, well then, quite frankly, who would do the talking? Right? Scripture, however, says that God has placed each part of the body where he wants it to be. And if all the parts were the same, how could there be a body? Simply put, no one person is the same. We each have our individual contributions. So you get my point here, right? We are all different. The ear doesn't run. The feet don't talk. The hands, by initial design, don't walk. Each of these elements of the body have their own unique function, and each of these operate at a different speed. You ever say something much quicker than you had the time to really think through what you were saying? Different parts of the body, yes, operate at a different speed. That was a metaphor for, that analogy of the body was a metaphor for us as individual members in society and in the world. So if you were to just take this metaphor and consider it in light of pace, in light of productivity, you would also begin to appreciate even more the reality that the widely adopted notion of getting things done fast and efficiently is actually the solution for being effective. And that, in fact, that notion alone, as being the solid truth or standard of truth for all, can be widely problematic, at least when it comes to a common approach for doing life. Okay, I'll say it again. Your pace is very much connected to your purpose and to your unique function in the world. Right? Now, certainly you can be living below your potential. You could be living below your unique design. You could be underserving yourself by only doing what makes you feel comfortable, but what you're doing that makes you feel comfortable is out of step with what you're actually gifted and talented to do. Certainly, you can be out of step with that. You could also be living beyond your limits to your unique design, right? You could be doing more than what you are really gifted at doing. And that could lead to making senseless mistakes. It could lead to you operating from a position of power rather than influence, where you are shaping and giving space for other people's gifts and talents to accelerate and move and show up in the spaces that you're in, right? Operating at either extremes can limit the benefits you add to others. It could also be a disservice to others. So the only one capable of making the necessary adjustments so that you align your pace with your unique call in the world is you, right? The only person who can be the master of how you function within the spheres that you have influence or can have an impact and utilize your unique gifts and talents is you. All right. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard this. saying, but there used to be a saying that, why are you moving at such a pace of a snail, right? Snails often get a bad rap. I don't know if you've ever heard people say things like, why are you moving at such a snail's pace? Or maybe you've criticized yourself and you said, why am I moving so slowly, right? I'm moving at such a snail's pace, as though snails, are problems, right? And are not contributing to the world. We tend to say those things without considering the unique gift of pace that's a snail's movement actually offers to their productivity and to the ecosystem that they're a part. Snails, believe it or not, if you don't know this, have very clear objectives and assignments in their lives that influence their pace. Their pace and the pace in which you move also needs to be dictated by the objectives, the goals, and outcomes that you're looking to achieve and that align with where you are gifted and have talent. Snails operate in that same way. And there are times when your pace, yes, will need to be slower than what you would have originally desired. And then because, that's just the nature of time and the environment you're in and what's going on in the ecosystem around you. And I call the ecosystem really being places where you may be functioning, have influence, be a part of community, be doing life, be doing work, and so on. But then there are also other times when you need to pick up that pace to reflect the goals and objectives that have to be achieved. Things might be more time sensitive. And in that, you have to take into account whether or not you can actually offer any usefulness to that accelerated rate based on your unique skill, ability, and talents, right? Snails, just to create a picture for you, have a particular role in the environment, in the ecosystem, and in the culture that they thrive. Their key contributions, right, are many, but I want to give you a highlight of a few of them so you get a sense that, moving at a snail's pace isn't all that bad, if I were to simplify it. They contribute to decomposition. Right? Snails eat dead plants and animals. They help break down those elements in the ecosystem. They contribute to soil formation. So snails have, in their movement, leave behind nutrient-rich feces. Yes, poop, right? That help form and help the quality of soil. Did you know that snails contribute to pollination? Snails, they are attracted to the nectar from flowers, and the pollen sticks to their bodies and their shells. And as they move along, they actually move pollen along from flower to flower. They also have, certain snails do at least, have the ability to create a very unique dye, a natural dye, a very unique ancient purple dye that comes from their secretion. So, and of course, eventually, one of the key resources that a snail leaves is being a food source, right? Snails not only create nutrients, but within the ecosystem of the life of a snail, they're also eaten by many animals, including birds and mammals and other insects, to serve as nutrients for them. So, no, I'm not suggesting that you be prepared to be eaten like a snail, right? But what I am suggesting is that the pace of your productivity needs to be such that it becomes a life-giving resource for other people based on your specific and your particular makeup. Okay? I'm saying a lot here, but hoping you're digesting it. Okay. The key to making your highest and best contribution to the world and in the world is to live like a snail. Yeah, that's quite frankly, that's it. That's the theme. The key to making your highest and best contributions to the world is to live like a snail by focusing on those goals and objectives that align with your unique design. And what I mean by that is your temperament of skill, will, and emotions. There are things that you are naturally, what do you call it, drawn to. There are activities that you are naturally drawn to. There are things you're effective at doing like no one else. It almost calls you. Some people don't want anything to do with logistics. When it comes to managing the logistics of a project, for you, it's an absolute turn on. You would rather do nothing else but to plan out and strategize everybody else's life, or strategize the plan that's needed to execute a big event. And then there are other people who want nothing to do with that, right? It's not within their temperament of skill, will, and emotions that actually tires them out thinking about it, right? So if that's you, that wouldn't be something that you would be exercising your energy towards, right? Your highest and best contribution in the world would be minimized. So you want to keep that in mind, right? That your highest and best contribution in the world has to be honored in the spaces in which you're in. So let me ask you a few things. What if you were asked to do something that you knew you did not have the skill to do, but were forced to do it anyway? How would you feel? You'd probably get frustrated. You'd probably be annoyed because you recognize that it doesn't create or offer for you the greatest opportunity to make the best impact and the most effective impact possible. All right? Instead, this is what needs to be the case. Your approach to tackling and accomplishing things that you value is what needs to have merit. You need to reframe your thinking about how you're utilizing your, as I described before, your capacity of your temperament of skill, will, and emotions. All right. The way in which you operate, the way in which you approach things, the areas in where you get excited and invest deeply, those feelings and emotions and desires have merit. And so your goal should never be to mimic other people's pace. Your goal should never be to mimic anyone else's pace. You would do yourself and others greater good instead of trying to mimic other people's pace and undermine the things in which you have a unique ability to grasp and be effective at and to offer your best self. You would do yourself and others greater good by being a student of the rhythms and styles and methodologies that you know have helped you in the past and are helpful today in allowing you to be effective at whatever it is you know you need to do. Two different people can have the same job, have the same position, but each of them can have very different approaches to how they're tackling the expectations of their role. Why? Because they're two individuals with, yes, the same objective, the same role, but have different ways of tackling a problem, different ways of addressing an area that needs to be supported, of finding a solution. One person may be able to think through a strategy very quickly, map it out, and execute it. The other person may be more of a ruminator and need that time to step back and think through what it is they need to do, spend more time listening and observing the environment and utilizing that time to help them look at all the possible pitfalls and strengths of an action before they just move forward with the strategy. Both people have the same job, but go about addressing it a different way, right? Give you some examples of people who we know in society who are well known, but who actually have had and have the temperament of moving at what others may describe at a slow pace or a snail's pace, right? Barack Obama, the 44th president of the United States, was notoriously known for taking his time with decisions, okay? He is known and was known by the people that worked around him in sometimes a joking manner. They would laugh about how long it would take him to find a solution to a problem because he didn't necessarily give answers right away. He would actually take in the information, analyze all positions, and then he would ruminate. He would wait. He would think through the potential consequences of the action before he offered his decision. And regardless of whether you agreed with his policies or politics, he is resoundingly considered to be one of the greatest intellectual minds of the 21st century. Okay? He's one of the most consequential presidents of the 21st century. It's not just my opinion. You just look at the history. But I will say, regardless of your position, the point is he was notoriously known for taking his time in making decisions. Okay? And he actually got flack for it from his team, but his team would often say that while they didn't always get answers at the pace in which they preferred, he often landed on decisions that were right and that were best for the team to take action on based on the conditions that they were in and dealing with at the time. There are other examples of influential people who, like yourself, were known for moving at a pace that the others would probably prefer that they moved faster. Give you some other examples. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, creator of the iPhone, right? He was known for meticulously considering every detail before he committed to a project. Albert Einstein was known for his deep contemplation and slow pace of thinking, and utilized that to help him think about the mathematical formulas and problems and scientific methods that he was offering as contributions to the field. Anna Wintour, the fashion editor of Vogue magazine, she was known and renowned for having a very discerning eye. She had a tendency to be careful and consider every choice before she actually landed on a decision regarding a collection and a design. Leonardo da Vinci, he was renowned for his art, but he was also talented in many other areas. He was not only an artist, he was an inventor, and he was known for taking a lot of time just to engage in research, to engage in experimentation before he actually executed on anything that became visible to the public. And you can also think of people like Warren Buffett, the billionaire investment strategist. He's known for the value in investing in strategy. He would spend time in strategy. He would spend a lot of time on intensive analysis before he made an investment, right? He didn't take those haphazardly. Those are people. These are examples of people who others would criticize as moving at a snail's pace. However, it is the very pace in which they operate that contributed to their success in the role they had. Malcolm X, the civil rights leader. I mean, this man was, often in the American public, he was villainized for being radical in his perspective, but he later became known as a man who observed political viewpoints more deliberately. He was a student of different ideologies. He would listen to different points of view before formulating his own perspective. And that actually enabled him to be an even more effective leader, who was once perceived as being more combative. He actually became more embracing of a variety of perspectives because he learned the practice and the skill of taking in information from a variety of perspectives before taking action in the public with his most talented gift, and that was speaking and giving perspective around issues of justice in the world. Okay? So all of these figures were gifted, they were innovative, they were effective, and each of them forged a memorable legacy because they valued the importance at moving at their unique pace, at the pace that honored their unique talents and gifts, their temperament of skill, will, and emotions, their unique gifting and abilities that were needed for the specific ecosystem in which they were a part was those skills and abilities were able to be great assets in the spaces they were in because they honored them and it allowed them to make the greatest contributions possible. All right? So here's the larger theme. That your pace contributes to your purpose and it is a companion to your priorities. Did you get that? Your pace contributes to your purpose and it's a companion to your priorities. We assume that because others are in the fast lane, we should be too. Well, that's simply not the case. All right. The examples I provided to you just now make it clear that your pace is actually a companion and you should see them as a companion to your priorities. Here's the bigger question for all of us. I'm posing it to you, but this is for all of us. How are you serving the ecosystem that you have been assigned to function in? If your pace is contributing to your purpose and is a companion to your priorities, the question is, how are you utilizing that pace to serve the ecosystem that you have been assigned to function in? Just like a snail has been assigned to function within a specific ecosystem and is doing its job, minding its business, being effective in its lane based on the pace that it has for the role it is given in its society. How are you serving the ecosystem that you have been assigned to function in? Or are you overly concerned about moving faster because everyone else is? Are you overly concerned with moving at the pace of society or the pace of a rhythm that fits the vision, goals, and objectives of everyone else while you circumvent your own gifts and talents, your own vision, your own goals, your own objectives? Certainly, there will be times when you need to interrogate your perspective about your pace, whether it's moving faster or slower, any kind of change, right? There are times when moving at, quote, a snail's pace is exactly what you need to be doing, right? There's a steadiness and a deliberate rhythm to a snail's motion that lets them operate within the demands of their specific assignment, right? And so they can fulfill their unique role. The difference is that many of us, the difference between us and snails is that snails keep their senses tuned to the environment, right? They're much better stewards, and we can take that lesson from them, being a steward of the environment, right? They know where and how they need to invest their energy. They are not mastered by comparison. Snails are not mastered by their natural deficiencies. In fact, they make up for their lack of keen eyesight by utilizing their other senses, their sense of touch, their sense of taste, their sense of smell, their sensitivity to temperature and moisture. They utilize those as resources for themselves, even with them not having very good eyesight. And they use that to help guide their pace and their productivity. And that's another hidden lesson for us, right? Snails do not allow their deficiencies or perceived deficiencies to be deterrents for reaching their specific destination or fulfilling their roles in the ecosystem. Okay? Snails don't allow their perceived deficiencies to be deterrents for reaching their specific destination or fulfilling their role in the ecosystem. So while their pace may not be as fast as others, their pace is rhythmic and consistent, and nonetheless, it's effective for the role that they play in the ecosystem that they are called to thrive in. So there's some questions you should ask yourself, okay? You want to ask yourself some critical questions. When you're interrogating your pace, whether it's moving faster, whether it's moving slower, whether it's making any kind of adjustment, there's some very critical questions you should ask yourself. You want to ask yourself, where is this sense of urgency coming from? Where's this sense of urgency to change your pace coming from? Is it internal? Is it an internal pressure? Is it an external pressure? Are you feeling rushed by others, or is this something is it a pressure you're placing on yourself? All right. So is it internal or external? In other words, is the pressure a result of expectations that I'm putting on myself, or is it a result of pressures being placed on me by someone else? Okay. And so if it's a result of pressure being placed on yourself, why is that the case? And if it's a result of a pressure being placed on you by someone else, if it's a result of pressure being placed on you by yourself, why is that the case? If it's the result of pressure being placed on you by yourself or someone else, excuse me, you want to ask the same question. Why is that the case? Are there things that you do or don't do that are contributing to the pressure, internal or external? If the sense of urgency is internal or external, you want to ask yourself, is it valid? So is the pressure valid? Is it appropriate? Is there a clear a lack of productivity or execution of something that needs to be done that warrants a shift in your pace, in how you're working and how you're taking action? Where does that need to get altered or challenged? Right. So I think we can all name an area where maybe we could do a better job at slowing down, taking stock, asking more questions, considering the consequence of our action or our words if we moved too quickly. And I'm sure there's other things we can all step back and say, hey, I could actually pick this up a bit. It's taking me too long to do simple things. I had a great mentor of mine, never forget it. He would say, he said, sometimes we take too long for simple decisions. Some decisions are not as hard as we make them. And so we want to really be honest about why we are feeling this pressure, and is the pressure valid, and where do we need to make adjustments, right? So you want to get to the root of it. You want to get to the root of that. You want to ask yourself, what keeps me moving at that pace? Why am I moving at that pace? What practices or habits do I need to change, right? So if there's a practice or habit I need to change, what is it? Be specific. Think about it, but be specific. And how would you hold yourself accountable to that adjustment personally and publicly? So one of the things, I can give you a clear example of this for myself. One of the things I have done with the team I help to lead is I've named my commitment in slowing down by really interrogating how many times we meet, how often we meet, and for what purpose. If I already know my team is meeting a number of times in different forms, whether it's my whole core team or different members of the core team meeting with others, if I know that there's configuration of time being used throughout the week, I'm that much more sensitive and getting better at it, and pulling away from some meetings so that folks can actually tend to the majors of their role, right? Give their energies to their superpower. For some, it might be strategy and having the ability to work through something very quickly, but the confluence of a number of meetings could be blocking their ability to do it. There's others who have superpowers of reflection and observation, and just negotiating an idea. And so they need the space and time to do that so they can then execute effectively. So me publicly naming my commitment to making that adjustment serves both me and the people that I'm accountable to, right? So identify, why do you need to make the shift in your pace? And then what practices or habits need to change? Gave an example of that, one of that being meetings, right? And I'm sure we can all identify with that in some degree or another. And then hold yourself personally and publicly accountable. My personal accountability is I go into my calendar, I take a look, and I move things around. If a meeting doesn't need to happen, it comes off. If I need to converge that topic into another meeting or communicate in a different way, I do it. Publicly, as I let my team members know of what I've committed to do. And I did that at the start of the year, and I did it intentionally to help us to regroup internally, and also name that I want our unique gifts, talents, and abilities to get honored in the spaces and for the roles in which we are each doing, right? I think another question you want to ask, and we want to ask ourselves, is my current pace compromising the quality of my contributions? All right. Is my current pace compromising the quality of my contributions? How can I balance urgency with my natural design or my innate gifting and talents to ensuring that I'm being effective without creating situations of burnout, right? So, since neither one of us, you and I, neither one of us can add more hours to the day, we have to honor the strategy of being effective that actually honors how we're built, right? It's important to understand our natural pace, so to speak, the ways in which we were naturally built, the areas where we have skills, talents, and abilities that come easy to us, and those that we have the ability to actually learn fairly quickly, and adopt and utilize them to be effective. We have to recognize that and create room for that, or else we will actually sacrifice the quality of our contributions because we're focused on adjusting to everybody else's need. Remember what I told you about snails and their eyesight, right? They have horrible eyesight, but they use their other senses, their sense of smell, touch, sensitivity to light, sensitivity to environmental textures, temperature, moisture. They utilize that to enable them to move forward in their unique role in the ecosystem so they can stick to their specific assignment. Just imagine if the snail was comparing themselves to all the other insects and animals in the ecosystem. Just how much of a distraction that would be to them, being concerned about how all the other contributors of the ecosystem are operating and comparing themselves to that. Good for them that they have poor eyesight. Good for them. So I wonder if there's some ways that you actually need to develop poor eyesight. Maybe it's not the best analogy, but maybe you get what I'm saying. Are there directions in which you're looking that's actually becoming a distraction for you to keep you from keeping your main thing the main thing? Right? Snails keep their focus on their core objectives. So because they keep their focus on their core objectives, and their eyesight, their poor eyesight, have something to do with it, and their keenness in other areas have something to do with it, they can be effective at getting what they need to get done and contribute in the best way possible. It would be a disaster for them in the ecosystem that they were called to contribute to if they did anything else other than what they were designed to do. It would be an undermining of the value. It would actually circumvent their contribution to the other elements, from decomposition to soil formation, right, to serving as a resource for the other insects and animals in the ecosystem, if they focused on being what all the other members of that ecosystem, of their natural ecosystem, were. All that to say, you and I need to remember the pace and rhythm from which we're most effective, that reflects our specific design. And then we need to engage our targets with that in mind. We need to embrace the assignment, embrace our objectives, and embrace our goals, and utilize our pace as a tool, as an instrument that allows us to be effective, even if we have to interrogate it along the way. All right, that's perfectly fine. We'll always have to interrogate and re-examine our pace to make sure it's aligned with the environment that we're called to make the greatest impact and offer the best of ourselves for whatever role we're called to play, whether it's family, whether it's work, whether it's community, whatever that might look like for you. All right, but I want you to remember that your pace is valuable, and there's a rhythm to it, and the goal is for you to find your rhythm, honor your rhythm, give it the space it deserves so you can make the greatest impact possible. Okay, so before we go, I just want to invite you, if you're interested, that I've just published a new book. It's called The Momentum List, Rediscovering Your Ability to Delight in Time Rather Than Be Mastered by It. And in this practical, easy to read and apply resource, you will understand the real power and importance of momentum. You will learn how to shift a simple common to-do list, of which we all make, into a momentum list, and understand why this momentum list idea is so important. You will also gain from that book mindset and tools that you need to delight in time rather than be ruled by it. So while other people are focusing on doing things that make everyone else happy, you can focus on doing those things that set the stage for you to flourish in your daily life, so that then you can tackle all the other things that are also important and need to be a part of getting accomplished and allowing you to make impact. The book is available wherever books are sold. I'll leave a link for it in the show notes. I invite you to check it out. But more importantly, I want you to take the content of this episode so that you can do what I encourage people to do each and every day, and that's to take care and live.